Hello? 2 minutes for a quick bathroom break or whatever. Thank you. I wonder if I could have everyone take their seats, please. Oh, actually, I need some water. We're going to go ahead and call the special Bloomington City Council meeting to order, please. And Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Moalamwe.
Here.
Alderman Stearns. Alderman Painter.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt.
Here.
Alderman Black.
Here.
Alderman Sadini.
Here.
Alderman Fruin.
Here.
Alderman Lauer.
Here.
Alderman Sage.
Alderman Sage, can you hear us?
Here.
Oh, thank you, David.
He doesn't get to vote yet. You have to
Right.
know you have the quorum, then do the motion, then he participates.
Right. No, we'll go there. Okay, and then I'm here. I think he asked me. Okay. Just to be sure. We're going to go ahead and start with public comment, and then we're going to move right to the budget. We're going to go ahead and start out with a familiar face, Mr. Bruce Meeks. Please come forward, and then make sure that you all have 3 minutes. And for those of you who are new, and I think there's at least one person who's new, make sure that you please state your address as well. Thank you. We will, as soon as we're done with the public comment.
Item 4, once
Yeah.
you get to regular business. I mean,
Right.
he can listen, but yeah.
Go ahead. Your time
Bruce.
starts.
Bruce Meeks, M-E-E-K-S, 1402 Wright Street, Bloomington, Illinois. The way this meeting has come about is challenging for me. I realize the code is there, that you can do this meeting in this manner. I really don't think it's conducive to being engaged with the public the way I thought all of you want it to be. To have votes during a normally work session meeting, I frankly find appalling. You have till April 28th. You have other legal means to extend an appropriation of the budget for the next 30 to 90 days, from my understanding. I think you're raising a lot of taxes, one of which I've asked 4 weeks ago for clarity on the utility taxes. Was there a deadline? Nobody ever got back to me. Luckily, I believe the Department of Revenue was correct. We're not going to see any of those taxes from the utility taxes, telecom taxes, until January of next year. How does that help the gap this fiscal year? I think you're grasping at straws. I do not believe you have taken the time to tell the city manager, we want budget cuts that aren't inflammatory. We want to start from the beginning to the end. Mitsubishi Motors, during their challenging times, threw the budget out and started from scratch. You've had over a year to work on this budget. I've seen very, very few work sessions on the budget until recently. I think I'm looking forward, if you do the gas taxes, I know some great gas stations on either side of the town, north, south, west, that aren't in the city limits. You're not going to be collecting taxes from StubHub. You're not going to be collecting taxes from the satellite providers. We are penalizing the franchise holders that we're in business with, including the fiber optic company that's trying to grow their business here. I think all these are detrimental. I wish we would have looked at this last October, November, and maybe the earmarking that the mayor wants so bad, we could have earmarked the very thing that our taxes are collected on, property. Our first responders protect our lives and our property. So how about we look at earmarking property taxes directly to pensions? Oh, everything's on the table. I don't think so. I think you've been put behind the clock, and you weren't given the opportunity to know what's going on. The ordinances came to you just, 72 hours ago? I've been asking to see the ordinances for 3 or 4 weeks. How can you vote on something you haven't had a lot of time to discuss as a council? By the way, I have at least an $8 million idea that's legal that won't reduce your services in this community. It will take at least, if I could have gotten all the details, it would take an $8 million off the books of the city of Bloomington. But we never had that discussion of all items on the table with the citizens.
Thank you. Mr. John Protzman.
Good evening. John Protzman, 2913 South Fork Road in Bloomington. I am here tonight to show my support for the proposed utility tax for the city of Bloomington. While none of us want to pay more money in taxes, the truth is that we have come to enjoy and expect a certain standard of living in our city. We want a safe city that is well maintained, where people have an opportunity to earn a living wage and to collect on the pensions they have earned. And children have the access to a broad range of educational and recreational facilities. These things come at a cost, but the funding for them has been delayed for far too long. I call upon the City Council to have the courage to do the right thing on the current budget proposal by approving the utility tax. While it is a difficult step to take, the problems will only get larger the longer we wait to take action. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph Johnson?
Joseph Johnson, 1106 West Oakland Avenue.
Thank you.
Basically, there's the city of Bloomington, as it is large and it does have a lot of services to offer to a lot of people. We are more expensive than some of our neighbors. So what are our neighbors doing that we aren't? I think a lot of it boils down to cutting our costs and not doing extra things like a water fountain out front. If I'm having a hard time making my budget at home, I'm not going to go out to O'Brien Motors and buy a brand new car because I can't afford it. I don't have the money. But we have money for a water fountain. We can provide water to water employees. I mean, we could go on and on and on. I think that's a moot point. I think the main point is, instead of raising taxes as an overall broad thing to do, I don't think we're going to accomplish it other than taking more money out of more people's pockets, and a lot of them can't afford it. I'm not going to say that I can't afford it. I'm not saying I can't, but I definitely would rather pay for one more year's tuition for my son than give the city of Bloomington more money to flush down the proverbial toilet. So no, I'm not in favor of any tax increase. If you want to look at any increases at all, why don't you look at increase the cost of the services for the Coliseum? We still can't we can't pay for the monthly expenses at the Coliseum. So I don't know about you, but if I cut your leg and it's bleeding and you have a choice between keeping the leg but killing yourself or chopping the leg off and sewing it up and moving on, I think it's time that we cut the Coliseum off and let somebody else have it. Yeah, we're going to have a huge loss and we're going to have money that we have to pay out that's going to nowhere, but at least we're not continuing to shove money down a hole that keeps asking for more that we can't pay for. How much sense does it make to continue to pay for something that continues to ask for more money and never generates anything back? I'm sure, excuse the humor, but I'm sure there's many of men, not in this room, but in many other rooms as well, that have an ex-wife or an ex-girlfriend that they could raise their hand to that have spent plenty of their money and eventually said, "Yeah, I'm done. Be gone." Well, isn't that time we do that as well? Thank you.
Mr. Elton Franklin.
My name is Alton Franklin. I live at 508 Patterson Drive here in Bloomington, Illinois. The faces have changed, but the song still stays the same. I've been coming here for a number of years now, watching things go, and every so often there's a bright spot, and then we fall right back into the same old rut. We talk about talking. We plan about planning. Nothing gets done. We get down to the wire and we get slammed because now we've got to throw in all these additional, it galls me to call it that, revenue enhancements. They're taxes. And you can call it what you want to, but simple point in fact is locomotive fuels tax, amusement tax, doesn't matter. You're reaching into my pocket again. It's all too fresh in my mind when I was living on the wire's edge. And it really doesn't hurt the ones who don't care. And that's the sad part of it. It's the ones who care, the ones who contribute, the ones who are working, who are busting their hump and trying to get by day to day. And it reaches a point to where it's just, you just don't know what the hell is going to happen. The money that goes into the tank that could have gone for something else, another shirt for my son, another pair of shoes for my little girl. Those are the kinds of things I think about. I love the people of this town. Quite frankly, the government is a different story because, like I said, I'm getting tired of the whipsaw. I'm getting tired of hearing promises. I'm getting tired of hearing the talking. I see a little glimmer every so often. And I really had some great hopes coming in because I thought I started to see some things that really really said that the city council understood what was going on. And then, okay, now we've made the words, we've made the noise. Now we're going to just do the same old thing. Wait till the last minute, throw it in, and to hell with the people. And quite frankly, that's the way I feel like this is. I understand that things have a cost. I have made my own suggestions. I've seen a number of excellent suggestions coming from other folks. None of them gets any consideration. You can talk about, yeah, it's everything's wide open, everything's on the table. Yeah, but these things have got paperweights on them and they're not going anywhere. One of the best stories that I ever saw, and I spoke to this once before, is where you had the budget out there and people defined what they were going to spend their money on. You didn't say, how much do you need? You said, how are you going to spend the money that we give you? And then a determination was made after priorities were set. And after all this time, we still don't have priorities. It's getting disgusting.
Okay, thank you. Now we need to move.
Mayor,
Yes.
if we need to suspend the rules, or I have one additional gentleman that was a little bit late would like to speak. Doesn't come often, but he usually has something very worthwhile to say.
Okay. We
Dale?
would need a motion to suspend the rules.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion to suspend the rules for one additional speaker.
Can you name the person then?
Yes, Dale Nassinger.
Okay. And is there a second? Oh, excuse me. Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. And do we need to go ahead? Can we do a voice vote on that, Madam Clerk? Okay. So I guess we need to vote.
Not yet.
No.
We have to vote yet.
No.
No alarm way.
We're voting on the board. Okay. Okay. Motion carries 7-1. Okay. Mr. Nafziger, you would come forward. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Dale Nafziger, 1600 South Main, Bloomington, Illinois. Did I do that right? I wasn't listening earlier. I'm sorry I'm late because I was out working. I'm dirty and muddy because I was out working. We've had 3 bad years in business. 2 years in a row we didn't hardly make any money, and I borrowed money to pay my employees so they'd all get paid. We made some tough choices. We lost some good people. We turned things around last year, and I finally made a profit and started paying down my debt from my loan that I worked to pay people. I had customers today that had expectations. They wanted their trees planted. One of my guys called in sick, so I went out and planted trees in the mud today. I'm not real happy about it, but it had to be done. My customers have expectations. Citizens of Bloomington have expectations. They want these budgets balanced. Every time you increase taxes, that doesn't fix anything. It just creates a bigger problem. I'm sorry, but I'm disappointed. About half the people here I know pretty well, and the other half the people I'll apologize to. I'm not mad at you personally, but I'm mad at the whole system. My trucks get 5 miles per gallon. When I fill up my trucks, it costs $150. I fill them up 2 and 3 times a week. It's just getting out of control. Everywhere I go, another tax, another fee. I run the Lafayette Club as well. I own it. And I was very disappointed this year. We've had 0 liquor club violations ever. We have a new rule. We have to send people to class. We have to train them. So our reward for perfection is a penalty. You've got to be thrown in with everybody else. And that's the way the city's doing things. Raise revenue, raise funds. It's only $35. It's only sending somebody to class. It's only another rule. It's only this. I can't hardly do anything anymore. I was late tonight because I was running around like a fool today. I'm sorry. We got to balance the budget. I love the zoo. I have friends at the zoo. $2 million for flamingos? Are you kidding me? I was out in the mud today listening to the radio and thinking, God, if they spend $2 million for flamingos, I'm just going to go berserk. My brother is moving out of this town the day he retires from State Farm. My sister's in the city. My sister is moving out of the city. She says, I've had it. I'm leaving Illinois. They're going to retire with friends in the Carolinas. My new house isn't in the city. It's going to be away because I'm tired of paying all the taxes. We have to balance the budget. I'm sorry. I'm a little upset. I'm a little pissy. My customers have expectations, and I met them today. I have expectations. We have to figure it out. If we have to cut something, I cut stuff. I lost people. It had to be done. I couldn't keep bleeding, and I stopped the bleeding, and I apologized to people. But I couldn't keep borrowing money to pay my bills and pay my employees. So I got to say, thank you very much. I'm sorry I was late, but I was working to pay my taxes today. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we need to move forward, and we're verifying that we do have a quorum, and we have to request participation by telephone by Alderman Sage due to personal illness. And I wonder if I could have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
We had lots of, second by Alderwoman Painter. Okay. And does this have to be, we can do voice vote. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Is anyone opposed? Motion carries. Let the record show unanimously. Dave Sage, are you there? Can you hear us?
I am, Mayor, and thank you for the opportunity to do this, and would ask for the courtesy of whenever folks are talking, make sure they're as close to the microphone as they can, because a couple of the public comments were kind of cutting in and out. So that would certainly help me, and would appreciate that.
Thank you very much, and we certainly wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
And I'm going to turn to we're starting just in terms of our agenda, just to clarify, excuse me, the fiscal year 2015 budget, and I'm going to turn to our interim city manager, Mike Kimmerling, who's going to give a little bit of an update, and then I will make a couple of comments, and we will move right to a conceptual approval of proposed cuts and restorations under item 4B. Mr. Kimmerling.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'm apologizing for City Manager Hales, who had a family emergency, as most everyone knows, and that's why he's not here today. Just a few comments that I'll make in regards to the city budget. The first thing is that, there is a fiduciary responsibility by City Council through the Illinois Municipal Code to adopt a budget before the end of the fiscal year, which is April 30th. While I know that there's a lot of balance that needs to go on, I would actually ask all of you to consider very much adoption of a budget and remembering that it is not an end but a start for the next year. At any point in time during our next fiscal year, we can actually amend the budget. Is my understanding that it can be amended and changed, but we do need to adopt one so we can operate. There's a lot of issues with spending authority that could occur that would actually have a very negative impact on the city and its operations day to day if we don't adopt a budget. And with that, Mayor?
Great, thank you. Again, this has been about a 9-month process. It was 9 months ago last summer in August that we first began to have in public at mayoral town hall meetings, mayoral open houses and town hall meetings, a discussion about the budget and about our impending public safety, our police and fire pension policy. The council, I think, did wisely in November adopt a very aggressive pension policy. That pension policy is for our police officers and firefighters. This is something that we ultimately have to pay. So there have been some misunderstanding of people who have emailed us and contacted us. We don't have any choice. The state of Illinois decides. We don't have the authority to say, you have to work till 65 or you have to work till 62. We don't have that authority to alter the pensions. So it is our obligation. We have to step up to the plate. We may be at the bottom of the federalism food chain, but we have to pay our bills. And I think the council did this and for the right reasons. We have a fairly steep set of additional payments over the next few years, but it pretty much after 5 years gets us to the point where we've done right by our future citizens for the next generation. It ultimately would save the city nearly $70 million in payments if we step up to the plate sooner rather than later. And let's make it clear that the firefighters and the public, the police officers are our first responders. They're putting their jobs on the line. They're putting their lives on the line for us every single day. So when we're running out of our house because it's on fire or there's a problem, they're running in. And when some bad person tries to get into our house, they're in to make sure that either they don't get in or that they get out. So these are people who are on the front lines. And so I think for lots of reasons that we did an important job there. The other difficulty is 5 years ago, we had a fiscal crisis. Most of us know that. And we shed about 75 full-time equivalent positions. Had we not shed those, it would be a lot easier for us to find budget cuts today. Had we had inflationary increases over the last 4 to 5 fiscal years in our general fund, even if they were 1.2%, 1.9%, 2%, it would be easier for us today. But that's not. We can't turn the clock back 5 years ago. It would have been a lot easier for us to handle the situation. We have to deal with what's in front of us today. And we have gone through 9 months of many mayoral open houses, almost every single one of them over the last 9 months. So that would be approximately 18 mayoral open houses. We've had most every one focused on the budget and our trade-offs and what's coming up. We've had 3 town hall meetings, one back in September, and late September I believe it was, and 2 fairly recently. We've had a public hearing. We've had many discussions in public, whether it's the Rotary or the Kiwanis, and month after month after month. Frankly, in spite of what some may have said, I don't think I've ever seen a city budget process that has been more open with more participation than we have. Does that mean we can't do better? Of course it doesn't mean that we can't do better. But it is certainly one that we've had lots and lots of public input in. So at this point, I think as many have suggested, it's time for us to act. We could have pushed this off till next week. The problem is that's putting it off even further, as I believe Alton Franklin suggested. We've already put this off long enough. That would be 2 days from our fiscal cliff, the 30th of April. So that's why tonight we have this on the agenda, and hopefully we will act. We will make the decisions. The proposal that is in front of us today is, I think, very clearly a balanced approach. The number of fee or tax increases is almost identical dollar for dollar for the tax, for the spending cuts that were proposed. And it does reflect the diligence, diligence of, I think, the council and the city manager and others and staff. We wanted not to just take a meat axe approach. We were listening to our citizens who said, we want cuts. We're willing to pay a little bit more, but we also want the vibrancy and vitality of our city, of our community to be maintained. And so that's what I believe what we have in front of us. Is this a budget that any of us like? No. I don't think there's anybody here who will like this budget. Is it a budget that we can live with? That's a question the council will answer tonight. Is it a budget that works? Yes. It is one that, as presented, would not require us to dip into our fund balance. That is, not require us to dip into savings to get through the year. The budget as currently presented will also mostly take care of any of our extra costs from this past winter, where we had nearly $1 million of cost overages in whether it's salt and overtime, et cetera. And this gives us a little bit of surplus of a little over $500,000 to mostly cover that. So from those metrics, I think it's fiscally responsible. Is it the exact mix of what any of us would want? I'm sure not. Certainly not what I'd want. Many of us have tried to swallow some pretty bitter pills as we've gone forward with this. But again, I think it's a very balanced approach, and it's certainly one where we have been listening, and it's now hopefully time for us to act. As we move forward, on item 4B, we have a conceptual approval of proposed cuts and restorations. These are the so-called boxes that aldermen and women checked to decide what areas that they wanted to have cut, or items that they wanted to have restored, or what their tolerance might be for some tax or fee increases. At this point, we're focusing on just the proposed cuts and restoration. We have approximately 10 minutes that has been designated for this. I have been advised by our legal counsel that generally I need to be a little more draconian about our minutes, and if we want to continue the discussion, of a particular proposal, then we do need a motion to suspend the rules, or if that fails, then we just move and we vote on the substance of whatever is in front of us at that time. So we'll first have conceptual approval of proposed cuts and restorations. Is there either a motion on the floor for this or some version of that?
Just a question.
Yes.
I don't understand what conceptual
Okay,
approval means.
the proposed cuts and restorations that have been put in front of us, do we support those, in other words, in concept? We're going to vote on the pieces of this before we vote on the budget as a whole, right? And the first, would we, in concept, accept, in a sense, the proposed cuts and restorations that are in our packet, okay? If there would be any amendments or changes to that, this would be the time to suggest them, and then we'd move forward. Thank you. I apologize for that, the lack of clarity. Okay. So we will, in other words, vote first on the cuts and restorations, and then we will move to the home rule sales tax sunset clause removal, and then 3 tax increases or fee increases. Okay. Alderman Fazzini.
I make a motion so that we can put this on the floor, but I also have some comments afterwards.
Okay.
I will second that I will second that.
What is your motion is to approve it as
Yes.
amended? Do you have any amendments or as
No,
presented?
As presented.
Okay.
I will second that motion with some comments as well.
Okay. Well, who would like to speak so I can decide roughly how many minutes we have to allocate? So we have definitely the maker of the motion and the second who wants to speak to this. Anyone else? Alderman Lauer. Okay. Oh, Judy. I'm sorry. Okay. 4 of us. So let's do approximately 2 minutes, and let's go Alderman Fazzini. Since you made the motion, we'll start with you. Fazzini, Black, Lauer, and Stearns.
For the 4th time, I think, I'd like to suggest that $700,000 be added to this so that we have a little bit more leeway, and that $700,000 is for not doing 2 intersections, which cost $350,000 each. And if you remember, the last 5 years, we've done none. And for this year, we have 3 in the budget. I would like to have 1 in the budget this year, 1 next year, and 1 the year after. That'll give us $700,000 that we could use to reduce interest costs.
And could you have a point of clarification on that,
Yes.
just so that we have that for the record? And then I guess what you're really doing is amending your own motion?
No, I'm trying to find out if there is support for this, at which point then we would do it, but I'm not going to avoid voting for a budget because that one item isn't in there.
Well, at this point, you're really not voting on the budget. At this point, we're just voting to approve in concept the cuts. If you want to make additional cuts, this would be the time to include them.
I just want to make the comment. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Alderman Black.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the restorations I wanted to talk about very briefly, and I'd like to do this in public as opposed to just via email, is number 35. That's the recreation. Is it okay if we call John up here to break down some of the...
Yes, it's
Maybe Ron?
given the 10 minutes that we have here, it's going to...
So
Okay,
I'm just very curious
quickly,
because I'd like
yeah.
to hear, because we got a lot of citizen feedback about some of the Parks and Rec programs that were on the table to potentially be cut, and I'd like to specifically discuss the ones that are, if we conceptually approve this, on the chopping block.
So you're referring to, mentioned number 35, the programs for 4,000?
Correct, yes.
Those would be adult athletic programs, mixture of softball and volleyball?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you may as well stay here then. Any other questions?
Not
Correct,
sure.
correct.
Zumba?
Zumba would not be affected.
We got a lot of feedback about Zumba.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Alderman Lauer.
Well, I would propose that we go through the list that Judy proposed and I proposed and look at doing all of those.
Okay, so is that a counter proposal?
That's a counter proposal.
And what's the counter proposal that is to do?
That we look at page 12 of the original document that we looked at originally, 12 and 13, and see if we can approve all of those.
Well, again, if that's a motion, then you want to approve all those cuts?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Alderwoman Stearns. Now, we do have a problem, though. We have a substitute motion, though, here, right? You're not withdrawing your motion. Okay, George? Yeah.
We only have one substitute motion at a time, and one exception being a motion to amend.
Amend, okay. So
So it's a motion to amend to add the cuts that Alderman Stearns and I outlined on page 12 and 13 of the original document.
okay, now, George, in order for them to amend, do we have to, does the maker and the seconder have to agree? Or do we vote on an amendment first? Okay. All right. Wonder if we can go ahead and any comments quickly
Which amendment are we voting on?
on the amendment that Alderman Lauer has proposed to the main motion. So we'd vote on the amendment first. Okay. Why don't we go ahead and begin our vote? And Alderman Sage, can you hear us? Are you voting on this as well?
Yes, this is on the Lauer amendment.
Yes, the Lauer amendment, correct.
Yes, I am prepared to vote.
Okay, go ahead.
No.
Okay, so the motion fails 2 ayes, and then, Madam Clerk, would you announce what would be 7 nays?
Nays are Alderman Milamwe, Alderman Painter, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Black, Alderman Fazzini, Alderman Fruin, and Alderman Sage.
Okay, now we will go back to the main motion. And Alderman Fruin.
Well, I chipped in here at the last minute here, I guess, but I think the way this conversation is going is Scott had a line item that he had question on. I think Kevin and Judy have, quote, line items they want to talk about. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I think all of us kind of feel that way. There might be 1, 2, or more items in here that we would like, myself speaking, a little more discussion about whether they can or they should or should not be included.
Well, I think that's what would be the point. If there's something
Okay.
you would like to have added, an additional amendment certainly would be in order.
So I would challenge you to challenge us, so thank you. And so I'll use one example, and that is 4 to 6 weeks ago, we had this conversation about adding all these personnel to the city. And I think there was a strong public voice that we should not add personnel cost at this time until we get our house in order.
Correct.
So I guess I'm saying here tonight that I would prefer that we not add any personnel to the budget at this time until we had further council discussion. And as we've said earlier, we can always amend budgets if we want to throw back in or add back in additional public safety or whatever the case might be.
Okay.
That's my biggest concern right now is adding personnel.
So essentially, that would mean that it would be the assistant police chief and the firefighter positions. You're suggesting that we remove from the restorations. Is that a form of another amendment?
That's my comment. If you want me to make an amendment, sure.
At this point, that would be in order because
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm not sure and I will make that amendment, I'm not sure where we're going with this because I'm not sure that all of us don't have 1 or 2 or 3 things we'd like to sort out. So I think I'm going to make this amendment. It's going to
this is the time that it would be in order if there's something you would like. Obviously, it's always hazardous to go down a budget line item by line item at the last hour, but at this point, I think that's a pretty clear one. If there's a second, and if this passes, then this is the time to have that discussion. If we run out of time, which is quite possible, we can conceivably extend this discussion.
Okay.
Sure.
Given that, then I will make a recommendation to amend the motion to not hire additional personnel in the budget.
Okay. Is there a second to this? Okay. The motion dies for lack of a second. Okay. Any other amendments? Okay. I'm sorry, Alderwoman Schmidt.
I would like to provide some support for Rob's suggestion for the $700,000 for the traffic lights. I would give a second to that if you want to make
In that case, I'll make the motion.
So you're going to make an amendment to your own motion?
Yes.
Okay.
And,
Go ahead.
and I'll second that.
And that would you clarify that so we have this for the record, so there's no question about this, and Mr. Karch, you know precisely what we're talking about.
We currently have in the budget $1,050,000 to add traffic signals on 3 different intersections. I would like to have 1 of those 3 done this year, 1 done next year, and 1 done the year after, thereby saving $700,000 in this year's budget.
Okay. A quick comment, Mr. Karch.
Alderman Fazzini, if it's possible, and for the council. The money being spent for the traffic signals is done under the motor fuel tax work. That is a separate fund than the general fund to which you're actively working on. So you can absolutely, as a council, do that, but the motor fuel tax money saved would only be able to be used for other motor fuel tax eligible work. Just a clarification of point.
And thank you, Jim, I understand that, but this budget has $4 million being taken out of it, out of a $10 million bond that was supposed to be used for streets. This would add that back into streets as effectively.
Okay. All right. And, okay, let's see. Alderman Milwambwe and, oh, excuse me.
With regard to the amendment,
Right.
Alderman, is your motion then to amend to delete $700,000 then from the budget and add those to this conceptual group? The way you stated it, you were talking about actually performing these other two in two subsequent years.
Let's leave that part out. I'm just saying put $700,000 back in this budget.
Out of that line. Okay.
Out of that line.
To the second as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Alderman Milwambwe and Painter. And if we go beyond that, then I'm going to need to have an motion for us to continue the discussion. Yes.
Well, I guess as far as those traffic lights are concerned, I think this is something that we talked about last year during the budget. If I remember correctly, a couple of the issues were related to safety, right, near Stevenson School. One of them had to do with economic development nearby, I think it's Auto Row, I guess, which made it very difficult. It's also safety, actually, because I do remember us talking about some of the traffic issues that people had trying to get out of that area and onto GE Road. So, I mean, in addition to that, then I would ask, which one do you do first? Where do we go with that?
Okay.
That's
Is that a rhetorical question? Or?
Yeah, I know.
Well, that's not. We're not deciding that this evening. But that is.
Right. I know, but before, I think it's important for people to know, before
There
we
are
go,
costs.
in that direction, that maybe Jim can provide some clarification about what would you do first,
Okay. Alderwoman Painter, go ahead.
I agree with Alderman Milawambe. I know that there have been several close calls with children on Arrowhead Drive, and I really hope that that would not be the light that would be taken out of the equation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And did you want, again, after this, we're really going to have to get a motion to extend debate if we want to. Yeah.
And if I can add one more thing.
Please.
I do know the one on Auto Row is one that has been delayed a number of times, at least once in the past. Was taken out of the budget in the past,
All right.
about 2 or
Jim,
3 years
do you
ago.
have a quick comment?
There's very good dialogue, very healthy dialogue. Each intersection has its merits, but very briefly, for the Hershey and Clearwater and Arrowhead, it would be our recommendation, professional recommendation, not to separate those out. It would be intelligent to do those together because of their proximity and their joint impact upon both intersections. So, Auto Row would be a logical one to do first, but there are also very much safety merits for Arrowhead as well. So just some brief comments for you.
Okay. All right. Now, we then are going to go ahead and vote on this amendment. Okay? Should be, okay. And Alderman Sage? Is it? I've got it. I'm not putting it on there until Alderman Sage?
Yes.
How do you vote on this amendment? This is the amendment, the Fazzini amendment to, in a sense, delay 2 of the intersections.
I'm very much inclined to like to have the $700,000 for other purposes, and in fact, I did offer that as a suggested cut.
Okay.
But with the conversation about public safety, particularly around the school and in that area, I will vote no on this proposed amendment.
Okay. Okay. The according to the amendment would have 5 ayes and 4 nays. And Madam Clerk, would you announce the nays?
Nays are Alderman Millamwe, Alderman Stearns, Alderman Black, and then Alderman Sage.
Okay. So this is an amendment to the main motion, all right? If we're going to have any other amendments to the main motion at this point, even if they're line item by line item, then we do need to suspend the rules. Otherwise, I will move to vote on the main motion as amended. So it would be to accept the cuts and restorations minus the two intersections. Yes, Ms. Silva? Pen? Sure.
The streetlights that you're talking about are in the current year's budget. They're in the 14 budget. They're not in the 15 budget. So you're acting to amend the current year's budget. It has no effect on...
Well, I think then it's out of order, right?
I'm not sure. I'm talking with George. Essentially, those lights were adopted in your last budget, and those funds are in your last budget. There's nothing in the 15 budget for these three lights.
Okay. George, does that mean that our vote is out of order?
I think it would be if that's the case. I'm deferring to Ms. Silva as to what's in the 2015.
Well, because then it becomes moot.
Because the
Yes, okay.
It doesn't give you any extra money or anything to do with in 15, and it's in the 14. You've already acted on it, so you can certainly amend the 14 budget, but I'm not sure that
We're not doing. It's not on that. We can't act on this here because the 14 budget is not on our agenda, so that would obviously be a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
Let you know
So,
that if you cut it, we
right.
don't have the funds to cut because they're not in the...
Okay.
Okay.
So, sorry, Alderman Fazzini?
No, just a question. This is in a fund, and if we don't spend it, that fund has extra money in it that we can use in another year.
Yeah, but you can't, that we can't act on tonight. It's not part of this conversation, so we're going to need to move on. Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on the main motion, which at this point it turns out is not amended. The main motion is to vote on the proposed cuts and restorations. There was an amendment that was defeated by Alderman Lauer and seconded by Alderwoman Stearns that had more systematic cuts. There was an amendment that was now defeated. Yeah. Yes, George?
Maybe a motion to rescind that amendment because it's been passed.
Okay. All right. No, okay. So let's go ahead and vote to rescind the amendment, please.
You have to have a motion.
Can I have a motion to?
I made the motion. I'll make the motion. to rescind.
Moved by Alderman Fazzini. Is there a second?
And I will second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Okay, go ahead. And Alderman Sager, would you vote? Are you prepared to vote on rescinding the amendment?
This was the $700,000 for the lights?
Yes, correct. That turns out it was last year's budget.
Yeah, and I would, if I'm understanding the motion correctly, then I would agree to not agree to the amendment, so that would be a yes vote?
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Okay.
And so the motion carries 9-0, including Alderman Sage, who is, of course, calling in. Okay. Now we will move back to our main motion. And Alderwoman Stearns, you have a comment?
I do.
Okay.
So now we're back to the conceptual approval of these. Okay.
Conceptual cuts.
And-
We had
yeah.
several different proposals, and
Okay.
Either none of which passed or one of
Right.
which passed, which turns
Right.
out not
And
to
I
be
have,
our current year.
have a few comments. And one of the first ones is the timing of this and how we agreed on the 2 minutes apiece. I'm very confused about the process. Why are we doing 2 minutes apiece?
Well, we've done a lot more than 2 minutes apiece.
Okay. Well, I mean, tonight, why are we doing 2 minutes apiece?
This was, actually, there's several time limits here that don't really add up. When we get to the utility tax, there are components that were added in that I don't think we probably don't need that much time. And here we might need a little more. But if we are going to go any further, if you want to suspend the rules for us to discuss this more, then fine. If we want to go ahead and move to the adoption and acceptance of these cuts and restorations,
Right.
the amendments that have been proposed have not been successful, or in one case was moot or not
I
appropriate.
understand about the amendments.
Right.
My question is, this is something that to me is extremely, important. We all spend a lot of time on getting our, things on paper and turning them in. And now we're voting, and we actually have 2 minutes to discuss what City Manager David Hales, I would say, or you, or the combination, came up with as cuts. I mean, or as restorations. And there's so much in here that troubles me. I mean, I could probably talk, and I won't, for half an hour easily about this. I've got many, many comments, one of which is to be really clear on the fact that we still have the communications director here, I believe, the communications director that
Well,
I
the
proposed.
communications was last
Okay.
year's budget.
We still have it. I proposed a cut of not
Right.
doing a, PR communications person for $100,000. We still have the 2 police chiefs, is that correct? We still have that?
It's whatever
The-
was
the
it,
new
that-
police- we
one
still have the new police
Right,
chief.
there were, right.
And we still have in here many, many things. And by the way, I'm not for any public safety cuts, but I am very troubled that we have another police administrator in the police department, and yet one of our detectives has been taken off the cyber crimes, which is the unit that investigates child sex crimes and pornography and all kinds of online criminal activity, which I would say is extremely important. So that is one of the administrative cuts that to me is a direct hit on the safety of our children in Bloomington, and I am not for that cut, and I'm not, as I said in my what I turned in, for really any public safety cuts because we are already down to the nubs. So I'm not for, I guess we're cutting a janitor or something, and frankly, I mean, I'm just not in favor of doing that because I think that we're adding administration and we're taking away from the on-the-street critical services that contribute to safety and well-being of our children and our citizens. So I cannot support this. And that is only the beginning. I did write up the position that I have on taxes and some calculations that I did, and I'll sit down with anyone to explain them, that no matter that Alton, not Alton Franklin, I'm sorry, we love Alton, but our other speaker, Carl Woodward, has told us, he came here last week, I guess, and said, you people are a joke. And I think what he was talking, this is an accountant, this is a very, very successful businessman in Bloomington who knows numbers and knows finance and looked at this and came to the town halls. And what he's telling us, I think, is that we are going over a cliff in the city of Bloomington. I have calculated that no matter how many taxes we increase, in 5 years, our deficit will be $19 million if we don't turn the spending ship around. And this doesn't even, I mean, this is, frankly, I'll just use Carl Woodward's, this is a joke. I've noticed in the past 5 years we've gone from $300,000 in administrative salaries in our city manager's office to what was proposed was $625,000 in our city manager's office. We spend $250,000 on food and travel. If I take a trip with the city, and I have, why don't we all just pay for our food and pay for our, why don't we all just bring our food? Then we can be taxed more. Why don't we take the hit?
Judy, Judy,
okay, I'll
you need to
conclude.
wind down because
That's fine.
we've actually
Okay.
not been 2 minutes apiece. We've been at this well over half an
Okay.
hour, and I think you've made all of those points many, many times in the past. And I'm going to go on to Alderman Lauer. And if you want, if the council wants to continue this discussion, that's fine. But we're going to need to have, after Alderman Lauer gets his say, a motion to suspend the rules to continue this
I'd
discussion.
like to make the motion to suspend the rules so we can discuss these.
Okay. Alderman Lauer makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Stearns. Okay, go ahead and vote. Oops, oh, excuse me, sorry. I can't get it off there. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Okay, Alderman Sage? No. Alderman Sage, can you hear us? Alderman Sage? Hello? Dave? Alderman Sage, can you hear us? We're looking for a vote on whether to continue the discussion or whether to cut off debate.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
And I'm sorry, I lost connection. Are we still voting on the Lauer amendment?
Correct.
I vote no.
Okay. Okay, the motion carries 5-4 that we will continue, and at this point, we didn't have a specified time, but we'll go ahead and give another 15, I'm sorry, Mr. Boyle.
There's a motion to suspend the rules needs to pass by a two-thirds vote.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, then it does not pass, that's true, I'm sorry. Okay, so then we will go to the immediate motion. And the immediate motion is to accept the conceptual cuts and restorations, in a sense, as presented. Alderman Sage, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Well, this again is the motion that is item 4B that was on our agenda to accept the conceptual approval of proposed cuts and restorations. Do you have a vote on that?
I vote yes.
Okay. So the motion carries 7-2. Madam Clerk, would you announce the nays?
The nays are Alderman Lauer and Alderman Stern.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor, I've noticed now that 2 or 3 times where Tracy has had some announcements to make, I am not able to hear her except maybe a syllable here or there. So the mic's going to have to come closer, or she's going to have to speak more loudly.
Okay. She was just announcing the 2 nays. The motion had carried 7-2, and the 2 nays were Alderwoman Stearns and Alderman Lauer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we move right along to the next item, which is a text amendment to the ordinance on chapter, should have my glasses out. Chapter 39, Section 130, the Home Rule Sales Tax, removal of the sunset clause. And is there a motion to accept the recommendation that the text amendment be approved and the ordinance be passed?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. We start with Alderman Fruin, who wants to begin the discussion.
Mayor, just an editorial comment that I think half of us weren't here when that vote took place. It's too bad we don't have the entire council.
You mean the initial one back when they, right?
Probably 07, 08, 09 or somewhere in there.
Uh-huh.
And I remember a kind of lively discussion at the time, and I was, well, it doesn't matter what I was. I said that sunsets never come off, and that's what we got here. And all I want to do here is just learn from that experience, and governing groups don't sunset, and they don't pull it. It's unfortunate, but I think we should understand and learn from what we did then and what we're doing now.
Okay, thank you. Other comments on this motion? Alderwoman Stearns.
Indeed, sunset clauses never come off, and there's no point, in my opinion, in putting them in. While I do not support tax increases because, as I've already said, I believe the tax increases are to fund frivolities, extra frills, and not the basic services at all. In fact, sadly, some of our cuts are actually taking away from basic services, and they don't need to. But anyway, I will support not sunsetting this tax because it's not really increasing anything. I don't think any of us ever thought it would be sunsetted, and it won't be, and that I can deal with. It's not a tax increase. It's a maintenance of what we've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Mao.
I'd just like to make a point to the contrary. Sunsets do eventually come off, and we've seen that in the failure financially of the city of Detroit recently. And I hope you take that into credence and understand that that is a very cutting edge. And, if we have to go there, I guess we do. I think we need to take a very solemn look at what we're doing here. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Seeing nothing else, so go ahead and vote, please.
Mayor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have some clarification because Dr. Carol Struck and myself were the two who represented the Bloomington Center for Performing Arts when we established this. We made the presentation. The vote was 6-3 at that time to approve it. It was supposed to be for the Bloomington Center for Performing Arts only, not the Coliseum. It's also supposed to be only for them and not go into the general fund. And it has since been limited to the BCPA to a certain dollar level, and all in excess has gone into the general fund since then. So just for clarification as to how this came about and what we're voting on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderwoman Schmidt.
I'm not sure that that's correct, Rob. I know exactly what you're talking about with the quarter penny sales tax that was to go 100% to the BCPA. I believe this is an additional earmarked for the Coliseum. Am I misunderstanding what this is?
John Kennedy is nodding in the affirmative. Right.
What I'm saying is accurate?
I mean, I believe that this, when Alderman Purcell was on the council, this was his proposal to help us get our hands around the cost of the Coliseum mortgage, basically.
That is correct. The 4% sales tax for the BCPA was implemented roughly 2001. The one that you're voting on tonight was implemented in 2007 or 2009.
And targeted specifically to pay the mortgage,
Correct.
basically,
Of
on
the Coliseum, correct.
Okay, so the part in here that's talking about the BCPA is not.
Correct. That should not be, the
And
BCPA should not be
Your
tied
point
to
is
this
well
one.
made about the other quarter
The
of
other one.
percent. I'm tracking on
Yeah.
that, but that's not what
Okay.
this is.
Good. Then we just need to correct this as only for the Coliseum, not the BCPA. Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. I think we are now voting on this sunset. Alderman Sage, can you hear us? Alderman Sage? Dave, have we lost you?
Yeah, I'm somehow back online again.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just want to make sure that we're now voting on the sunset removal, item 5. And how do you vote on that?
I vote yes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, the motion carries 8-1. Would you announce the nays?
The lone nay is Alderman Lauer.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. We move then to the text amendment to ordinance, again, similar theme here, Chapter 39, for implementation of a 4% amusement tax. Is there a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Moved by Alderwoman Painter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Second by Alderman Milwaukee. Discussion. Okay. I guess we'll go ahead and start to vote. And Alderman Sage?
I will vote no on this item.
Okay. Then there are 3 nays and 6 ayes on the amusement tax. Madam Clerk, would you announce the nays?
The nays are Alderman Stearns, Alderman Lauer, and Alderman Sage.
Okay. Thank you. We move on to the next item, item 7, which is also a text amendment to Chapter 39. And this is of a 4 cent a gallon local motor fuel tax. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Alderman Fazzini. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Schmidt. Discussion. Okay, let me see who wants to. Alderman Lauer, Stearns, and Black. Okay, Alderman, and Alderwoman Painter. So, Alderman Lauer, you have the floor first, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm against this fundamentally because it's extremely hard on our business community. I've worked in small business and own several small businesses of my own, one of which would have been put at very high risk if I had had this at my plate as a business owner right now. I had a fleet of trucks, and at the point that our wonderful governor at the time raised our licensure fees, I decided to close up shop, and that's what I did, because it made no sense for me to continue to operate and pay the kind of workman's comp, the kind of insurance, and then on top of that, the kind of tax upon tax. And the reason I'm bringing that up, anytime we produce anything in the city of Bloomington, whether it's a good or a service, and every level of production that's involved, it doesn't matter whether you're making beer nuts or you're going to your local dentist, okay, we add a tax to that. And that's multiplied and passed on to the consumer eventually. At some point, the consumer will no longer bear that expense, okay? And then we look at either finding another way for that business to exist, another product or service, or they're going to close up shop, just like I did, okay? And so we're already seeing a number of our businesses in dire straits, just as my constituent Mr. Nafziger expressed this evening, we're going to put additional stress on his business again, and he may not be able to make his bottom line again this year. And point in fact, I passed out a little handout that kind of covers folks that are much more in tune to exactly what's going on here in Bloomington than I. Moody's Analytic Precepts Report of October 2013 talks about a struggling property and casualty insurance industry and the public sector having putting additional risk of falling back into a recession. Okay, and they go on to talk about risks which are weighted to the downside because of the trailing job creation due to demographics and our low industrial diversity. So if our financial sector doesn't do well, we typically don't do well. And folks, we're not doing well right now. We've got an uptick in unemployment, okay, in the recent months from in the 7% range to about 8% now. And that's highlighted again down at the bottom of the page there. Talks about the Milken Institute Best Performing Cities 2013, where America's jobs are created and sustained. Bloomington Normal is now, as of 2013, ranked 98th, down from 66th in 2012. So that's quite a drop. And those components that they're looking at are evaluating job, wage, salary, and technology growth. And so it just underlines what I've been trying to bring. Thank you.
Alderwoman Stearns, and then Black and Painter.
I agree with what Alderman Lauer said. There is no question that you increase costs, and you will decrease your business community's ability to thrive and to add the economic engine in this community. And Mr. Nafziger, who has a wonderful, successful business here in Bloomington, really an anchor for the South Side, really, told us in perfect language tonight. He told us how it is. A lot of us work at universities. We don't live in the real world, and we don't understand what this does to the average citizen. And don't tell me, I've heard it won't increase prices. You need to go down to St. Louis sometime, and you will watch the gas stations in Missouri and Illinois. And I will guarantee you will see an exodus, constant exodus. And they not only buy gas over there, they buy everything else over there, too. The people from Illinois is what I'm talking about. Now, we don't have a bridge, and we're not on a border. But what's missing on this list is Chenoa, Pontiac, Lexington. I don't know about the county. I don't think the county has done this, I don't think. But if you think people don't go out of town and they aren't going to buy gas, when they get there, I guarantee you they are. And this is also going to increase our costs at the city of Bloomington because we're a pretty big gas consumer. So this is just very disappointing. It will not work. And frankly, it's just going to take money out of our citizens' pockets and take money out of the local economy. And it's a shame that we can't lead. We have to follow. Oh, well, these other cities have it, so obviously we have to do it. Shame. It really is. I'm very much opposed to this.
Okay. We'll go on to Alderman Black. And just as a clarification, this is the tax is earmarked. I don't think I mentioned that for streets. It has to be.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate this, and if you'll indulge me. So I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and I remember when I turned 16, gas prices, and the risk of sounding nostalgic, were like $1.50. And I remember saying that if this, and then it went to $1.75 and then $2, and I'm thinking, how am I going to be able to afford this? And my father lived in Aurora, and that was DeKalb County, and I grew up in Cook County. And when I would visit him, I'd always fill up my gas tank because it was about 25 to 30 cents less than it was where I lived. So I'm definitely sympathetic to the risk of people wanting to go and shop for gas elsewhere. That being said, I've never been a big fan of the motor fuel tax. There's a lot of reasons why. Number one is it's a failing system because the wear and tear that cars are putting on roads is not equivalent to their weight in their cars. So a Prius is putting wear and tear on the roads that's not paying their fair share of motor fuel tax versus what they're paying. And we cut out the National League of Cities, but when we were out there in March, this was a hot topic about how the feds are looking to increase the motor fuel tax 22 cents and then tie it to inflation so it would go up every year. The state of Illinois has had conversations about raising the motor fuel tax to pay for the roads because this isn't a problem unique to Bloomington. So this has made me very leery from the get-go, and I've said that very, very much publicly. That being said, I've talked to a lot of people on Ward 7. When we had our town hall meeting, I've taken just a high number of phone calls from people. And at this point, the conversation has shifted to what are you going to do about our streets and how are you going to pay for it? And this is one idea that we can do to go directly to streets, create that line of sight. My support of this is very hesitant, and the minute that the feds come through and perhaps pass, well, Congress isn't known for passing anything, nor is Springfield, a motor fuel tax increase on the drastic level that they've been talking about, I will immediately put forward a resolution to end a motor fuel tax like this because we can't. It's too much, and it's not funding what we need it to fund. There's a quality of life that Bloomington has, and that's something that I'm willing to fight for, and the citizens are expecting of us. And it does cost money, and people want our streets to be funded appropriately. Things cost more. Cars are having more wear and tear. We have to be cognizant of that. So, my support for this is incredibly hesitant, and we'll keep an eye on the feds and Springfield to see what they're going to be up to.
Alderwoman Painter.
Thank you. I've been following gas prices for the last 6 weeks, and we are paying almost exactly what the other places that have a 4-cent motor fuel tax have been paying. Interestingly, the gas prices seem to go down every Monday night in Bloomington. I wonder why. Same reason that they might go up before Easter vacation. There's a lot of play in gas prices, and we've been paying for this tax all along without getting the benefit of the revenue stream. While I agree that if the state were to impose a 4-cent motor fuel tax, we would feel that. The local market wouldn't even things out. We'd all be stuck with it. But for this, I just think it's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Okay. At this point, we'll go ahead. An aye vote is in favor of the text amendment. And Alderman Sage, can you hear us? Do we still have you?
Yes, I'm here, Mayor.
Okay. And I wonder if you could tell us how you vote then?
I will vote no on this proposed amendment, or this proposed
okay.
text change.
Okay. All right. The motion carries 6-3. Madam Clerk, would you announce the nays?
The nays are Alderman Stearns, Alderman Lauer, and Alderman Sage.
Okay. Now we will move on then to, excuse me, let me clear the results. Item 8. Now these, I think there are 3 components, but this is a singular text amendment, which is the public utility tax, which would be earmarked for police and fire pensions. It would go from the current rate of 2.5% to 3.75. It's 1.25%. It is the town of Normal is approximately 5, depending on the fund. Again, as we've known before, virtually every city within about 120 miles of us that's our size is at 5%, partly because communities have tried to avoid the property tax increase. Anyway, these, I will take the 3 times and add them. I don't know that we will need that, but if we do, we will take it. That would be 25, 35. So I don't know that we're going to need 45 minutes to discuss this. This is, I'm pretty sure it's a typo because it's not something that I recall the city manager or I thinking that we needed these number of pieces. But at this point, we will continue our discussion, and wonder if I could see who would like to speak to this. Let's see, I think, actually, Mr. Boyle, you want to speak to this. I'm sure that if you want to speak to it, it must be procedural.
That's correct. It is. If you wish to discuss them as one, item 8 is fine, but they are separate in terms of their being text amendments. So
I was told, actually, I did clear it earlier today that these are all voted as a group. Well, that was the tech, we can maybe, that was the legal advice I got as of about an hour and a half ago, that these can be considered and should be considered as a group, even though they are listed separately. Patty Lynn, you were part of that conversation, isn't that was? I'm not having early Alzheimer's here.
not to, I wasn't at the meeting that you were at. I was at another one at the legal department where we discussed the proper procedure for this, and that would be our suggestion. Obviously, you're free not to follow, but I would say that that was the understanding that was a full consensus of the department at that time.
And, okay,
You could talk about them if they're that related. You could talk about them at once, but they're best brought in separately.
okay. Well, we have conflicting legal advice then. At this point, I'm not quite sure which, if we have the count to, I would entertain either motion, either one to begin the first or one to deal with them as a group. Alderman Fruin.
Mayor, my only thought was, based on our discussion, it might generate a understanding that voting for them separately or together isn't going to make any difference. But that's dependent on the conversation. So maybe as individuals, in our discussion, we should sort out we are yes or no on individual items.
Okay.
So I think it's going to work itself out.
So if I understand you correctly, as our conversation ends, well, essentially we would really need a motion on the floor. Let me start out by asking, is there a motion to consider them as a group? And if there's not, then we move on to individuals. Okay, there's not a motion to consider them as a group, so I think as default, we move on to consider them as individuals. The first would be item 8A, proposed gas, water, telecommunications. And is there a motion to begin discussion? Motion to approve. No motion for the item 8A. Okay. Then the motion fails for lack of a second. Item 8B, proposed electric utility tax. Is there a motion to approve that? Item 8B. Okay.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then but you have to have a second. Item 8B, a proposed electric utility tax for the text amendment. Is there a second?
I'd second to put it on the floor.
Okay. Second for by Alderman Fazzini. Discussion. Start with Alderman Fruin, and then Schmidt, Stearns, and Lauer. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to be clear. We've got a lot of moving parts tonight, and we've already gotten through most of them. And I have long been a opponent for the utility tax, and I'm going to stick with that. I just don't think it's the right thing to do, especially since we've already approved the sunsetting, the amusement tax, and the motor fuel tax. So just to get my opinion out on the floor real quickly, I'm going to vote against these individually or collectively.
Okay.
And my position is very clear, and it has been clear for a long time.
Okay. Thank you. And just also to clarify for everyone in the audience and others that this is, any of the utility taxes would be earmarked for our police fire pensions. And Alderwoman Schmidt.
Thank you. I have also long been an opponent of this. I think the utility tax is about as regressive a tax as we can possibly get. I think it was Mr. Meeks this evening and possibly even earlier has talked to us a little bit about when this tax actually kicks in. Have we missed a deadline? And I've heard from many people about the concept that we might consider increasing property tax as a far less regressive tax and more typically tied to pensions. So I would appreciate getting some clarification on those two issues.
Well, the first one, the legal counsel, there are no legal problems. That obstacle is not there. But the others, what was the second one?
The second question has to do with, I understand we talked at our last meeting about property taxes and the fact that we missed that opportunity to have that conversation for our last I mean, we've missed the calendar for that, and we could not have a conversation about that until December, I believe, was the date I remember. Um, and I guess I'm wondering about, knowing that we just had a conversation about how we never sunset taxes. If we pass this tax and then we have an opportunity to actually have a less regressive tax that is tied to our pensions, then is there value in addressing our pension promise in that?
Let's see, moving on to who's next? Alderwoman Stearns.
Thank you. No question about how regressive this is. And it will make people have to decide between food. I mean, none of us even here, even in the audience, could probably even imagine this. But I promise you there are people in Bloomington that are struggling to the point where they must decide food, medicine, rent, what. And this is just unbelievably regressive and will punish those people. Furthermore, it will also punish businesses. Every business is a consumer of utilities, and this is just another nail in the cross, so to speak. It really is. And I want to thank Alderman Lauer for bringing this Moody's outlook from April 2014. They have lowered Bloomington's economic outlook. That's Moody. That's not me. That's not my opinion. It's theirs. And they're tying it to our struggling economy and saying that we're in danger of falling back into recession. And I don't think we've really ever recovered. Recession hurts the working poor, the struggling single moms, the elderly on fixed incomes more than any other segment. And this is just another penalty and burden that we should not, in my opinion, be doing at all. Because, and again, one more thing, and I know I'm always running into my time, because we have not cut things like city administration or even council traveling and buying food and staying and airline. We haven't even looked at that. We haven't looked at things that are just unacceptable. And the flamingos at the zoo, and we all love the zoo. The golf cart, on and on. The communications director, what? To communicate that we're now considering bankrupt? And what are they going to communicate? We need to take care of the house. And we're not doing it. And this is not the way. It is not the way. But there are ways, and we came up with $5 million in cuts that are just basically, not even a consideration. So this it's difficult when we're doing this on the backs of the least among us. Thank you.
Alderman Lauer.
Well, ditto, Alderman Stearns. Thank you, Judy, and I certainly support everything that she said there. If you want, Mayor and others, to tie a revenue stream to pensions that we should have been paying all along, why not tie or earmark the property taxes that we are already paying for pensions, that we already owed and we are negligent in the past, and we may be negligent in the future if we don't continue to fund them appropriately, to the property taxes that we already pay. If we're raising taxes, we're not paying for additional pension funding here, folks. We're paying for all these additional premium things that we really don't need. And these are unnecessary programs. They're not fundamental needs. And the folks that we're talking about with this tax are fundamentally right on the edge. And I support them. I do not support this.
Alderman Miller-Wampley.
Thank you. This is also something that I've been pretty hesitant about because I don't want to burden those who can least afford it. At the same time, I also, I know we kind of made a pledge last year to fund our pensions when we voted in the ordinance. So I guess what I'm wondering, if this were not to pass at this time, what would be our options?
Well, anything that does not pass on the revenue side, we'll be dipping into savings for. And as I had mentioned earlier, the budget as it was presented, that's on the agenda, would not dip into savings and would actually have enough to mostly get us through, even pay the amount that we had in overage costs in this past winter. So we'll be dipping into savings. And so that's the bottom line. Alderman Fruin.
Mayor, just a quick comment that I don't want to be misunderstood that I'm not for funding our obligations. So I just think there's another time, another place, and maybe another taxing opportunity or vehicle's a better way to say it, to fund this.
Okay. Anything else? We're going to go ahead then. The motion is on the floor to text amendment item 8B, which is proposed electric utility tax that would go from 2.5 to 3.75%, and this would be earmarked for police fire pensions. Would everybody please go ahead and vote? And Alderman Sage, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and again, we're voting on item 8B, which is the proposed electric utility tax that would go from 2.5 to 3.75% earmarked for pensions. How do you vote on that?
I will vote, I will vote yes for that, because it's for the police and fire pension fund.
Correct. Okay. All right. The motion fails 4 to 5, or 5 nays, 4 ayes. Madam Clerk, would you announce the nays?
The nays are Alderman Lauer, Alderman Stearns, Alderman Schmidt, Alderman Fazzini, and Alderman Fruin.
Okay. And we'll clear that. Okay. We move on to the item 8C is a proposed municipal gas use tax. And actually, I'm going to ask Patty Lynn if you would come forward and explain what this is very quickly.
8A and 8C are tied together. If you buy out-of-state natural gas or non-NICOR, you have to be charged on a use basis rather than an occupation tax. So they really go together.
Item 8A and C.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I don't know if anybody was waiting for item 8A and C. That's the telecommunications and water. Is there a motion to approve items 8A and C? Okay. Seeing none, then we move right along to our vote on the final budget. Adoption of the fiscal year 2015 budget and appropriation ordinance as presented and amended. So none of the utility tax earmarked for public safety pensions passed. The other items did pass. That would leave about a $1.7 million gap that we have to go to reserves. Is that? Oh, yeah, excuse me.
Could we please just have a recess for a few minutes here so that the finance director can actually put that back there?
You want to give us exact numbers? Okay. Okay. I wonder if I'm going to need a motion to recess, correct?
15 minutes sound reasonable? 20 minutes?
15 minutes. We will come back at 7:15. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for a 15-minute recess.
Moved by Alderman Black. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Stearns. And can we do this by a voice vote?
Yes, you can.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Dave. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
I kind of don't understand how did we get I really wanted to vote for it. Oh, it's huge. It's huge. Oh, definitely.
And the infrastructure to me, when we're going to charge people more than what is well, actual fees. No parking. There's a couple of blocks. There's one block on the other side of the road. It shows a lot of parking, and they showed us the line. Wall. Why they did it. It'll be showed. I know, right? I don't know if we've actually met them before. We've seen it together. Today, yeah.
I've been hogging the podium for the last several meetings, so I think I should.
I wonder if everyone can take their seats. We are about a minute late behind what I said, but we are trying to get the numbers. We wanted to see how close we were and what the decisions of the pieces of the budget would be. And let's see, I'm waiting for, as soon as Alderwoman Stearns sits down. Alderman Sage, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Again, I apologize for the delay here, but we did want to get some updates on what this would mean in terms of the pieces that were passed, because we will certainly have to dip into our savings, and so I want Patty Lynn, if you would come forward and just clarify what this would be.
Okay, with the things that were adopted and not, we need to adopt a budget with less revenue, the general fund budget with less revenue than we have in expenditures, and we'll be utilizing $1.2 million in fund balance. Your Exhibit A would change. I don't know if we need a motion before we talk about this, George, but the numbers on your Exhibit A now would change. I don't know, I can just shut them out, but for the Exhibit A attached to the budget ordinance, your revenues would now be $90,028,309, and the expenditures would be $91,244,899 as they were delivered to you. And then the bottom line for expenditures at the very bottom would be $169,793,027. So with those adjustments based on the actions.
Okay, can you say,
I'm
Dave,
sorry,
can you hear us, Dave, or is it a little faint there?
Yeah, it's always faint when Patty Lynn's talking.
Oh.
But I think I caught the high points of it.
Yeah, so essentially, it's roughly, instead of having about $500,000 surplus to pay for some of our winter cost overages, we'd have about $1.25 million deficit that we would have to cover with savings, plus the $500,000 and more in cost overages from the winter. Is that correct?
The cost overages from the 14 budget right now are estimated to be $1 million.
$1 million, okay, $1 million, all right.
We'll be bringing that to you next Monday.
Next Monday, okay.
Oh, yes, so the revenue would now be, on the general fund, just to repeat, would now be $90,028,309, and your expenditures are $91,244,899, a difference of $1.2 million, which we'll be taking out of the rainy day fund. And then that would change the bottom line of all the funds to 169 on the revenue side, 169,793,027. And the expenditures would remain as you see them here, 179,426,393.
Okay. I actually have a procedural question of Mr. Boyle. On this, we have adopted the pieces to the ordinance, and now we need to adopt the budget as a budget ordinance pursuant to that, correct? And that budget, if I were to veto the budget and we bring it back at a special meeting on Friday, which is one of our options, we've talked about this with legal counsel and the city manager in the interim, would we have to vote on all of the individual ordinances again, or only things that might change? In other words, do the ordinances that passed stand, or do we have to start from scratch?
Unless specified in your veto, the ordinances would stand.
Okay.
Or unless, well, I suppose unless you contradicted it by something, you're going to have to specify your veto.
Okay.
In no fewer than 5 days. Specify the nature of.
Well, I'm not going to do that because we'll be back here Friday at 5:30. So if I do that, so I'll talk to legal counsel, you and Mr. Juergens and others in the next few days if that's necessary. Okay. And I also understand that we do need a supermajority. Is that correct? We need 5 to just pass the raw budget. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you. Now, we're going to go ahead and move toward a discussion of the budget, and I'm going to let Alderman Lauer start.
Well, I just have a procedural question. What if we make a motion to table until a later date so we can take a closer look at exactly where we are and what our options are. Maybe if it's even overnight or till Friday or whatever you would whatever you would prefer.
Well, at this point, I wanted to find out what the story was, what was the bottom line, what the procedures would be, and so everybody would hear what that was. If you wanted to make a motion to table, it'd be difficult to make a motion to a time certain if we're not sure that that's necessarily going to have to happen.
Well, it probably makes a little bit of a procedural catch-22 if we go ahead and vote on it and it doesn't pass.
Well, then it becomes moot. Then we have to come back to the drawing board anyway if the budget does not pass.
My point.
So it's hypothetical that the budget would even pass at this point. We don't know, right? Let's see. At this point, we're moving on. We're discussing the budget ordinance itself. I'm just looking at the numbers. It is number 9, adoption of the fiscal year 2015 budget. And who'd like to speak on that? We've got, again, approximately 15 minutes, but we will move on. First of all, Mr. Boyle, you want to speak procedurally?
A point of order, that would be incorporating Exhibit A as amended.
Yes. I'm sorry, what did you say?
It would be incorporating, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Be incorporating Exhibit A as amended.
Okay, so I would ask for a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2015 budget ordinance and budget appropriation ordinance, and specifying what, Mr. Boyle?
Incorporating Exhibit A as amended.
Incorporating Exhibit A as amended. Okay. Is there a motion at this point to approve the budget incorporating Exhibit A as amended?
Yes.
Okay. Moved by Alderman Fazzini. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Alderman Milwaukee. Okay. And I wonder if I could find out who would like to speak to the budget itself. Okay. Alderwoman Schmidt, and then Schmidt, Black, and Fazzini, and Stearns. Schmidt, Black, Fazzini, and Stearns. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Fazzini, Stearns, and Milwaukee. Thanks. Go ahead, Alderwoman Schmidt.
I'm trying to understand what this process is. I have to say I have never been through a budget process that feels so fractured, and so I'm really struggling with this, Mayor. If we adopt this budget with the amendments that Patty Silva just gave us, and we have to dip into our savings for $1.2 million to balance our budget on paper, that does not absolve us of the obligation to find $1.2 million in savings, right? I mean, we're not saying, well, our work is done and we're done and we don't have to do anything now. We'll just take it out of the savings account. I mean, to me, and so I guess I'm trying to understand why you would veto that. And not give us the opportunity to continue to do some work on this to close that gap.
Well, at first, of course, it's hypothetical because the budget hasn't passed, right? And I'm also working through it too. I've actually been through many budget cycles. I've never been through one quite like this either. So essentially, my concern is this a budget that I can in good conscience pass? When we passed above a public safety pension for our police and firefighters, policy that was bold, and we didn't step up to the plate to say how we'd pay for it. We said in some version of this during our debate that we'd do that during the budget process. Well, we're months and months and months into the budget process, and we're at the 11th hour, and we haven't done it. The other thing is that we get through it by taking from our savings accounts rather than stepping up to the plate and making tough decisions. And so those are the concerns that I would have. And those are my concerns. We'll see whether the budget passes. And otherwise it's moot. Yes, Alderman Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm filled with more questions than I have comments at this point. So right now we're talking about the $1.2 million because we failed to pass the two taxes, correct? Okay, so I see some nodding, but that does not include the overtime cost that we have for the winter. Is that something that's separate entirely? Because if we're talking about that, then we're looking essentially at a $2 million
What happens towards the end of the year, every year we look and review the budget for our budget transfers in the current year. Right now you're adopting next year's budget. In the current year, because of the tremendous winter that we've had and some other overages, we were bringing forward some budget transfers to the council. That was scheduled for the 28th. The snow and ice budget is $650,000 over budget, and some of our other legal, as we've had changes there. We've had some emergency repairs at the Coliseum, as you know. So those things, because of our shrinking revenue, as we know the sales tax isn't coming in, a lot of times we can ride through a lot of those overages, but this year not so much. And so as we begin to bring that forward to you on Monday, we are looking at the potential for about $1 million in use of fund balance for the current year. And then in addition to that, this 1.2 as it sits now would be also coming out of the general fund balance.
So in essence, we're talking about we'd have to dip in twice for that.
You would be, if this passed the way it is, yes, you would be.
Gotcha. So then I guess procedurally speaking, that we vote on this, it fails, then we're talking about another meeting before Monday?
We would, the meeting that I've talked about with the city manager, interim city manager, legal counsel would be 5:30 immediately after the mayoral open house on Friday. And we have Monday is our last meeting. Monday's meeting would be packed. If we want to have any kind of discussion whatsoever, it would be very, very difficult to do that on Monday. Certainly also wouldn't recommend doing it 2 days before the deadline.
Okay.
It'd be like, well, you might have done this, cramming for an exam at
I don't
3 in
know
the
about
morning
that.
that starts at 8 a.m.
I'm not familiar with that analogy. Yeah, okay. But still, we haven't addressed our structural problem, which is what we've been kind of talking about
We
from
haven't
the
begun to do that.
beginning.
Right.
And if we were to go ahead and support the budget as presented right now, or the amended presentation, we still would have to come back and come up with significantly more cuts or more tax increases. So,
Right. And I think if I'm, just to clarify, I think as Patty Lynn said, if we don't make progress, we'll have massive layoffs for next year. And that's unfortunate. But Patty Lynn, just to clarify, if we didn't pass the utility taxes, we'll debate it in just a second. I don't think it's fair also to Open Meetings Act for us to have the chair chattering unless we're doing it in public. We would have, if we don't pass the public utility tax, any portion of it as was presented, then we're going to have to dip into fund balance by 1.7 million approximately in the coming year, correct? If nothing changes. 1.2. No, but the total amount? No, the amount that it would bring in.
The amount that you would bring in.
Right, because we'd have to dip in 1.2 million to get us through the next fiscal year, plus $1 million.
Oh, yes.
From
yes.
last year. If we have this, we've got $500,000 to pay for last year's or this current year's cost. So it's about 1.7. Is that right?
Yes. If you had, we would have had $500,000 to throw towards the $1 million that is coming next Monday.
Okay.
So yes.
All right.
That answers my questions. Thank you.
Okay. And then we go to Alderman Fazzini and then Stearns and Millawamboy.
Okay. In my overview of the whole budget, we appear to be a council that for the last 20 plus years has not really presented a balanced budget. We have deferred maintenance, according to our city manager, of $400 million on all the city properties. We have streets to get to average, according to our director of public works, would take somewhere in the area of $60 million. And we have pensions that are about $100 million in need, and that we have addressed. We are going to be short, and we're going to dip into the general fund, but we will do that to make sure we fund pensions the way our policy says. So I'm going to assume that pensions are going to be taken care of properly, and that we're going to be $460 million of things that need to be done that we haven't done over the last many years. If you divide 20 years into 460 million, you get $23 million a year that had not been done. That's how much we weren't balancing our budget by every year. When we pass this budget, even if we pass it with $1,200,000 short, that's coming out of the general fund, that does not address the $400 million that is necessary to fix our fire stations, our police stations, our golf courses, and anything else that we own. And we're not getting our streets fixed like we need to. So let's not delude ourselves into thinking that we're going to solve this and have a balanced budget. Even after we present what we say is a balanced budget, it is not.
See, Alderwoman Stearns and then Millawamble and now Lauer.
Thank you. It's inconceivable to me that we have to talk about taking the 1.2 million out of our savings. And on Friday, I will be out of the country, so I don't know how many people can be here on Friday, but it won't be me. I want to agree with Alderwoman Schmidt about the fractured process here, and I will also say, to me, an incredible rush here to make this decision. I would like to present to the city manager, the mayor, another list from my already 5 million list of cuts that I really think the citizens of Bloomington would be behind, and they would certainly total 1.2 million. They would total more than that. And I don't think it would cut a single essential service in the city. In fact, and the concept of laying off to me is almost funny because I see absolutely no need to do that. Maybe not hiring some communications people and PR people and resume building people. No, I see that, but these are not people here in the city, and especially not our workers that I value probably as highly or more than anyone here, and have proven it. So I see no need to dip into savings. I see no need to rush to judgment at all. I think this should be voted on at a regular council meeting next Monday when the citizens of Bloomington, to me, that's what they're telling me is this is when we have the budget, right, at a council meeting. And that's one reason I think we don't see a lot of people here tonight. So this whole concept of special meetings and meeting Friday, I mean, I don't think that gives people a fair chance to really understand and know what's going on. And it certainly doesn't give me an opportunity to present what I think are completely logical ways to come up with 1.2. And it wouldn't touch a worker and it wouldn't touch a service. Really, the flamingos at the zoo, the golf cart path, a couple of properties that we haven't even talked about selling in Bloomington that we've had offers on. I mean, and that's, I don't want to get specific, but things that people would not feel, see, or care about, frankly. I mean, I love the flamingo concept too, but really, when we're talking about not mowing our parks, so I'd like the time, a few days, to get this sorted through, to present a few things, and to look at not taking it out of our savings, but to look at just, doing what normal average families in the city of Bloomington do, which is tighten up a little bit and figure it out. So, but I can't do that tonight, and I certainly can't do that by Friday. I won't be here Friday. So, and I don't know that we'll have the quorum. I don't know. But anyway, thank you.
Okay, just to clarify, this isn't a rush. I would disagree. We've been at it for 9 months. It's because we haven't made the tough decisions in the past. We really only have had proposals on the table for a few weeks from aldermen, and we've been at it for 9 months. Actually, longer than that, but I've been at it. Most of us have been engaged. I'm sure Patty Lynn and others have been at it for more than that. Okay, so in the order that we have, let's see. I have different lists here. Alderman Millawamble and then Lauer.
Thank you. Yes, this process did feel like quite a bit of heavy lifting. Not as fun as I would like it to be. I do think we cannot necessarily, and I know Alderman Fazzini has talked about how many years it's taken us to get to this point. So I do agree with that. It didn't happen overnight, so I don't know if we should expect to solve it so quickly. In 1 month or 1 year. So it's probably going to take a multi-year approach. With that said, I think personally, I'm ready to support this budget. I don't like dipping into reserves, but at the same time, I do think we've heard clearly in a city of 78,000 people that there are people on all sides, some things that people want and others that don't want certain things. I'll I'll take the example of flamingos, who seem to be picked on quite a bit. um, I actually think I know the Zoological Society is pretty active in terms of their fundraising. So I do think, at some point, we've talked about public-private partnership. So we have to put our money where our mouth is and not discourage groups like that who have been traditionally very strong in terms of their fundraising. So I think we do need to support that. We have to be careful with our quality of life venues and how much we spend on those in terms of public subsidies. Uh, and I think, to me, this process, although it has been difficult, I think it helps us to kind of realign some of our priorities, take a stronger or a closer look at some of the things that we might not need. There's always debate about that. The communications position, I happen to disagree, but that's what we can do amongst friends, right? I do disagree. I think it's very important. You cannot have an organization that has a budget of close to $200 million without somebody to communicate about programs and services. To me, that's just very critical. Um, let's see. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to mention here. Yes, in terms of infrastructure, I did mention my support for the local motor fuel tax because I mean, the needs are so great, there's just not enough money to be able to do that. And I know Scott has said that eloquently, is that you have a number of people who are using cars that are more fuel efficient, but yet are putting more wear and tear on our roads. And our city has grown quite a bit. I think the fire chief can attest to that, having to extend some of our services so far away. So in that sense, I think we do need to make some progress in terms of our road infrastructure. Uh, but I'm ready to support the budget and, just step by step. We're not going to solve it in 1 year, I think.
Alderman Lauer.
Well, I think we can solve this very quickly and very easily, actually. We need to look at cuts, like I said before. I don't think we did our due diligence in looking at each one of these items individually. I think there probably would have been some support from other members to look more closely at these cuts, maybe take a few of them out. If we looked at them individually, I'm quite sure we can find the adequate amount of money. Thanks.
Okay. Alderman Fruin.
Just a quick comment, Mayor. It seems to me what I'm picking up is a consensus from the council, from the 9 of us, that based on our individual voting, that there is support for this amended Exhibit A. And I also hear some continuing dialogue that we need, beyond that official vote, that we've got time to continue to look at some of the line items and amend the budget. So I don't see the 1.2, 1.5, 1.7 as a stumbling block. I think we can continue to work on that. Personally, I'd hate to see a veto it. I just think it's going to continue to stir the pot. We've all worked hard. None of us like what we're going to do tonight, but we're going to do what we're going to do, and that's my opinion.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay. We're going to go ahead and then vote. I vote is to support the budget as presented. Alderman Sage, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And the vote, okay, it's number 9, adoption of the fiscal year 2015 budget and appropriation ordinance as amended. And how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. The motion passes 6-3. Madam Clerk, would you announce the nays?
The nays are Alderman Lauer, Alderman Stearns, and Alderman Black.
I did not hear the nays, Mayor.
They were Alderman Stearns, Lauer, and Black were the nays.
Thank you.
The motion does pass 6-3. Okay. Now, again, this has been a fairly long, difficult budget process. We've all got very different perspectives on what should be cut or not cut and what positions we value, what programs we value. And we also have a budget that I think is very unfortunate. It's not just the 1.2 million, it's about another $500,000 that we do not have, that we're going to have to dip into our reserves. There is nothing earmarked for pensions, and I know it's a continuing process, but we've been at this a while. It's certainly nothing that, as I think Alderman Milawamboy said, we're not solving it quickly, and there's no question we're not solving it quickly. But this budget does very little to get us there. It means that we've got a Herculean effort next year. And frankly, when a lot of people are going to be up for re-election, I doubt that there's going to be a lot more political will to make some of the tougher choices. And Alderwoman Stearns and Alderman Lauer, I do agree that there's certainly some things that we can cut. I just wish it was as easy. I think we're finding it's not quite so easy. If we want to keep public safety, if that's off the table, if public works is off the table, if many of these things are in a sense off the table and we want to keep our quality of life, there's not that much left. I've seen your cuts, Judy. Some are good, but some are just not feasible. We have a central administration. Let's make that clear. We have 5 positions in central administration. If we were in a small town that was the size of our wards, you would have 4. And the person called a city manager, an assistant, somebody who is someone who is a receptionist, who greets people, answers the phone, and an administrative assistant to run errands. We have 1 more than those 4, and we're a city of nearly 80,000 and growing. And I would say, what $175 million a year human operation, so business or government, has fewer than that central administrators. So I think it isn't there. I wish it were. Nobody likes central administrators. I mean, in concept, we like maybe some of ours, but we don't like them. I've never heard of anybody running for political office who says, hey, I'm for central administrators, right? There's not much there. I wish this budget would make some progress. It's not, though, that it just doesn't make much progress. We said we had our public safety, we were going to value this. We had a public safety commitment to fund our pensions, and we said we'd do it in the budget process. We are here a few days out, and we haven't done it yet. And we're borrowing money. We are dipping into savings in order to get us through this year and pay the overage from last year. I can't sign this budget. So we'll put it in writing. I'll talk to our legal counsel, Mr. Juergens and Mr. Boyle and others, and we will be back Friday at 5:30. If you can't make it, you can't make it. But we're here. We're at the tail end. It's like when if I have students who've been studying all night, and they say, oh my gosh, I'm not feeling good. Well, okay, we shouldn't have put it off. We've got tough decisions. I didn't run for mayor to avoid the tough decisions, and I'm not about to start now. I can't sign this budget. I'm sorry. So this is my notification. This is a veto. It's never been used in the city's history. It's used now. So hopefully we can come back to the table, and if the council wants to pass it over my veto, they can, but I'm not signing it. At this point, can I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman. Yeah, Alderman.
Just a question. Can you kind of walk us through the 5:30 Friday? Some of us might not be here.
You can certainly call in if you're out on business according to Illinois law. All right, you can come in. We will start immediately after our open house at 5:30, and we will have on our agenda these items or anything else. If you want proposed cuts, we can come back and we'll put, I'm certainly open to how you want to structure this, but I would like us to try to structure it so that we are as productive as possible. I'm sorry.
Okay. Just some clarity. What will it take to override the veto?
Supermajority 6-3.
And
6 votes or whoever many is here or calling.
And is that if we have less than 9 people here?
Right. Quorum would be 6.
Okay, so if we have 6 here, it takes 2/3 of a quorum.
I think it takes two-thirds of the quorum or two-thirds of those present, Mr. Boyle? Two-thirds of those holding office. So it does require 6 votes to override. Okay. I'm sorry, we cannot. I appreciate that you want to weigh in, Mr. Brandt, but I'm sorry, we can't do that at this point. Alderwoman Stearns, question, comment.
Are we going to have Alderman's comment before we adjourn?
They're not on the agenda.
So we can't?
You can make your comment now. It has to do with the budget.
Thank you.
Sure.
It does.
Oh, yeah.
And my comment is just I appreciate everything you're saying about central administration. My question is not so much how many people, I don't care how many people we have, but that the cost of it has gone from about $325,000 roughly 4 years ago to what was proposed this year of $625,000. And also, when I look at administration, I made the point about, another assistant police chief, which again, administration, and yet we're down a cyber crimes detective. So administration goes a lot further than just our central administration here. But the budget there has doubled, and that is what I'm talking about. So maybe, and I do think, with all respect, we're paying our city manager as much as the governor of the state of Illinois, which is fine. I mean, I guess, we have to because everybody else does, I guess.
We're probably getting more than our money's worth, but I won't go down.
Anyway, I just wanted to clarify that about administration. It goes all through the city.
Sure.
And I'm for the guys on the street doing the job. I'm sorry, but to me it just makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, just as a clarification, our city manager for a city our size is actually not overpaid. It's virtually the same. I mean, that doesn't mean we have to pay him, right? But if you just want to look at the empirical evidence, we're at the level of normal, and normals is about the same. But anyway, at this point, one last point, and this is, I beg everyone's indulgence. Mr. Jim Karch, you are old as dirt. You're 40. Please come forward. We have something for you. Now, you're supposed to say, hey, if I'm old as dirt, how old are you, dude? Okay. Please come forward. And this is what a way to spend your 40th birthday, I mean, in budget battles, and nothing's easy. Jim, come on over here, man. Okay. Happy birthday. Thanks. Thanks. No, budget cuts, man. That's definitely a frill, and you're not getting a cake from us. Anyway, is there a motion to adjourn? Yes. Moved by Alderman Fazzini, second by Alderman Black. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.